think back to ancient Israel, maybe under King David. You probably picture battles, maybe royal decrees.
Sure, the big historical moments.
But imagine the king getting involved in something really granular, like the super detailed organization of temple service.
Not the first thing that springs to mind usually.
Right. And it makes you wonder, can the way things were structured, thousands of years ago actually teach us anything useful today?
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into in this deep dive. We're focusing on 1 Chronicles chapter 24 from the Bible.
Okay, 1 Chronicles 24, and this chapter gives us this incredibly detailed account of how King David sorted out the priests, the descendants of Aaron.
Into 24 distinct groups or divisions for their work in the temple.
It's almost like looking at an ancient operational plan, isn't it? An organizational chart.
It really is. And what we want to do is try and understand the wisdom behind that structure.
And see if it maybe sparks some surprising ideas for our own lives, especially maybe for our faith.
Exactly. How it connects to faith.
Okay, so let's get into this blueprint, though. 1 Chronicles 24, it starts off laying out Aaron's family tree, basically.
Yeah, his sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar.
But there's a really important detail right near the start, isn't there?
Yes. Nadab and Abihu, they died without having any children.
Ah, right.
So the actual priestly duties, the lineage for that, fell to Eleazar and Ithamar.
Okay.
So later, when King David is organizing things, he works with Zadok, who's from Eleazar's line, and Ahimelech from Ithamar's line.
Got it. So representatives from both remaining branches.
Precisely. And they structured the descendants according to, their specific roles and duties in the temple.
Now, something that jumped out at me reading this was the numbers. It says there were way more chief men from Eleazar's family, 16 of them.
16.
Compared to just 8 from Ithamar's line. Wouldn't that sort of, automatically create an imbalance? Maybe even unintentionally.
That's a really sharp observation. And it actually highlights why the method they used for dividing them was so critical.
Okay, how so?
The text specifically says they divided them by lot.
By lot, okay. Like drawing straws, almost.
Sort of, yeah. It was a common practice back then, often seen as a way to find out God's will, actually.
Ah, interesting.
So the idea was to take human preference or bias out of the equation. It was meant to ensure that both family lines, Eleazar's and Ithamar's, were fairly represented in leading the sanctuary in the house of God overall.
So it wasn't about who had more leaders initially, or maybe whose ancestor was more prominent at some point. It was about this deliberate attempt at impartiality, guided by something seen as, divine?
Exactly. Trying to level the playing field, you could say.
And the whole process sounds very official, very structured.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't casual. We're told that a Levite scribe, Shemaiah, wrote it all down.
He recorded all the divisions.
Yes, meticulously.
Yeah.
And importantly, it was done publicly in front of King David, the princes, Zadok the priest, Ahimelech, and the heads of the priestly and Levite families.
Wow, so total transparency. Documented, witnessed.
It really underscores how serious and organized they were about it.
And we even get some of the names of these divisions, right? Like Jehoiarib was the first lot drawn, then Jediah.
Haram, Seram, and so on, all the way down to the 24th division.
24 groups in total, and each one had its specific turn, its order for serving in the temple.
Following the rules originally given to Aaron.
So it wasn't just assigning people randomly. It was about creating this predictable, reliable system for worship, week after week, month after month.
Exactly right. Consistency. And, this level of detailed organization wasn't just for the priests descended from Aaron.
What else?
The chapter also briefly mentions organizing the rest of the Levites, too, the broader group involved in temple service.
Okay, so the supporting roles, essentially.
You could put it that way.
Yeah.
And importantly, the same principle applied.
What? They used lots for the Levites, too.
Yes. They also cast lots, again, right there in front of David and all the leaders.
Huh. So this idea of fairness, of impartial assignment, it really ran through the whole system.
It seems so. The text even makes a point of saying it was done this way for the principal fathers, alongside their younger brethren, basically, ensuring fairness between the senior family lines and the more junior ones.
It really emphasizes the how they did things was just as important as the what they were doing, the service itself.
Precisely. And, thinking about this ancient system, it actually offers some, surprisingly relevant ideas for us today.
How so? What kind of connections can we make?
Well, take that first point.
Oh.
Order and fairness in leadership. Using lots, even if it sounds strange to us now, showed this deep commitment to being impartial in something sacred.
Right, taking personal preference out of it.
So how might that challenge us today? When we think about assigning roles or opportunities in our teams, maybe in volunteer groups, even families.
Yeah, it makes you think about how easily things like personal connections or just, perceived status can influence who gets what role. This ancient way really aimed for something different.
A level playing field, grounded in something beyond human judgment.
Okay, what else? What about the fact that the service was split into these 24 rotating groups?
That's another key thing. It means no single group, no one priestly family held all the power or all the responsibility all the time.
Ah, interesting. It wasn't concentrated.
Exactly. It promoted shared responsibility. Temple service wasn't just for one elite clique. It was a collective effort involving all these different divisions taking their turn.
That feels very relevant today, whether it's work or community projects or church ministry. That idea of shared ownership versus relying on just a few key people.
Absolutely. How vital is that sense of everyone contributing, everyone sharing the load for the long-term health of any group? It builds stronger teams, stronger communities.
It really shifts the focus from individual stars to the whole team working together. And the fact that David set this whole system up, it wasn't just a quick fix, was it? He was planning ahead.
Definitely not a temporary
Well,
solution. David's careful planning, well before the temple was even built, actually.
right. Solomon built the temple.
Exactly. David was creating a sustainable framework. He wanted consistent, dependable worship for generations to come.
Building a lasting system.
And in our world, which is often so focused on the immediate, the next quarter, the next deadline, how often do we really prioritize building those kinds of robust, long-lasting structures and processes?
That's a good question. It really speaks to the value of foresight, of thinking beyond just right now. Okay, and there's one more thing that stood out. The idea that every group had its turn,
Yes. Every single one of the 24 priestly courses had its designated time to serve.
which implies what? That every role mattered.
Precisely. It suggests that no role, no specific week of service, was considered inherently superior or inferior in God's eyes. Each division had its vital part to play in the overall rhythm of worship.
That's powerful. It underscores the importance of valuing every contribution, doesn't it?
It really does. And how well do we do that today? In our jobs, our communities, our churches, do we genuinely recognize and appreciate all the different contributions, the visible ones and the ones happening behind the scenes?
That's something to reflect on. Seeing the value in every part of the whole. So, okay, we've looked at the structure, the principles. How does understanding all this ancient temple organization actually, strengthen our faith today?
Well, I think what's really compelling is seeing this deep-seated commitment to order, to
Yeah.
fairness, to shared responsibility, woven right into the fabric of their worship.
It wasn't just administrative detail, it was part of their religious practice.
Exactly. And that points towards a God who actually values structure, who values justice, even in the practical details of how service is carried out. This level of careful organization suggests a divine nature that's both intentional and equitable.
It's like seeing good governance principles almost reflected in how they approached worship.
You could say that. And the emphasis on everyone having a role, everyone sharing the load, the inherent worth of every contribution, that really speaks to a divine design for community.
A design where everyone is needed, everyone matters.
Yes, it suggests we're all interconnected, and every single role, every person's contribution, has significance from a divine perspective.
So learning about this historical example, it's not just history, it can actually inspire us.
I think so. It can inspire us to bring that same spirit of fairness, that same value for teamwork, that same appreciation for every single contribution into our own lives, our own communities.
And in doing that, we're sort of reflecting those divine values, reflecting God's character and how we operate and interact.
Absolutely. It gives us a practical, historical picture of how principles like order and justice can actually be lived out in a community that's dedicated to serving God.
Okay. So wrapping this up then, our deep dive into 1 Chronicles 24 really shows us that these principles, order, fairness in how things are decided, shared responsibility, planning for the future, and valuing every single contribution. These weren't just like bureaucratic details for an ancient temple.
No, not at all. They carry profound insights for how we can live and work together and worship today. They're timeless principles, really.
Order, fairness, teamwork, foresight, and valuing everyone.
And maybe a final thought for you listening. As you think about this ancient structure, consider how these principles of order and shared purpose might actually inform your own life.
How they might strengthen your sense of belonging, maybe, or the contributions you make.
Exactly. In whatever communities you're part of, work, family, church, neighborhood, how can embracing these ideas deepen your own faith in a God who, it seems, really values both meticulous detail and harmonious collective effort?